I am pretty much crazed. Not a great way to start Monday morning.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. I actually had a pretty smooth start to the day today, which I'm always thankful for.
Always thankful for an easy morning, really. Hi, Lynn.
Yeah. Hey, Lynn. Exciting. We have another
Hi, Teddy.
guest speaker. Hi, Lynn. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
How are things going with you?
Just
Oh,
saw
I can see
you
him.
here.
Oh, great. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So welcome,
morning.
Eddie. I'm really glad to see you here.
See him.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you are. Hi, Eddie.
And I just went ahead and put the recording on. I hope that's okay with you, Eddie.
That's fine.
And again, I'll say this to everyone, including you. If you want to say something and you don't want it recorded, just say the word pause, and I will pause it for the time that you speak.
Okay.
So let's start. Eddie, why don't you start by introducing yourself? I would love to know more about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eddie. I'm an assistant sheriff at the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for about 20 years. I came here in 2002 from San Mateo County. I was a deputy sheriff and a correctional officer there for 3
Eddie,
years.
hold on a second. We have some background noise. I don't know if it's on your end or someone else's, but if everybody. could just
Kathleen.
mute.
Kathleen needs to mute herself.
Ah, all right.
Excuse me. Yes, there was background noise and I didn't get his last name.
So he's actually got it printed in above his head. It's Engram, Engram. And Eddie, if you wouldn't mind, just start over because we had a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Assistant Sheriff Eddie Engram, currently at the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, overseeing the detention division. I've been with Sonoma County for 20 years. Before that, I was with San Mateo County as a correctional officer and a deputy sheriff. Throughout my career here at the Sheriff's Office, I've had a variety of positions. I was a domestic violence sexual assault detective on 2 separate occasions, a field training officer, internal affairs investigator, and I led the internal affairs unit as well as training as a lieutenant. Operations captain, overseeing all of the patrol operations for the Sheriff's Office. I was the captain during the Kincaid fire. And currently I am the assistant sheriff, as I said, overseeing the detention division.
So does that mean that you're the top guy in terms of the jail?
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. Or not so awesome, I don't know, but it's a lot of responsibility for sure.
It is. I manage about 300 employees and a $74 million budget.
And how many people are in the jail?
Currently, as of this morning, about 720. Our pre-COVID average daily population was about 1,150 inmates on average.
Wow. And what percentage of the jail inmates are homeless? Do you have a statistic on that?
Yeah, it's about 30%. About 30% are homeless. It changes as everything changes on a daily basis, depending on what the population is. But we average about 30 to 35% are homeless. 48 to 50+% have some sort of mental health diagnosis. Typically about half of those are more acute diagnosis, and about 40% report some sort of addiction issue.
Okay, so Eddie, when we've had other candidates here, I've asked everyone to not give us a campaign speech, but just talk a little bit and let us talk, have a more interactive conversation.
Well, that's perfect for me. I don't.
Like so amazingly well. You you did it in about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
so let me give you just a few more minutes to talk about why you think you'll make a good sheriff and how you see the campaign going and so on.
Okay. I typically don't like to give campaign speeches, so I'm not, I'm a lifelong law enforcement person. I'm not really a politician. So if someone doesn't ask me for a campaign speech, I won't give you one. But overall, what I'll say is that the sheriff's office is a unique entity, unique in law enforcement. There's about 58, well, there are 58 counties, 58 sheriff's offices. By contrast, there's over 300 police departments. What makes the sheriff's office unique is that it runs detention, and it also has the law enforcement component to that. And I am unique in the sheriff's office, being that I have worked in the operations side, which is the law enforcement side, and also working in detention, which is something that is extremely challenging. Throughout my career, the last 4 or 5 years that I've been in management, I've managed and led deputies, not only from our agency, but from other agencies during every single wildfire that we've had since 2017. And in addition to managing the jail, I've not only managed the jail, but I've managed it during a pandemic. And we've done better than other organizations in managing that. We've had no deaths and no hospitalizations among our inmates. And that's really a testament to the staff here and the programs that we put in place. I can't take credit for all of those. There are, as I said, over 300 people who work here on the detention side, who put a lot of care and effort into making sure that our inmates are taken care of. My policy statement is public safety is number one, keeping people safe. That is the most important part of the sheriff's office. Improving detention services is also something that I am passionate about. Since I've been in the jail here, I've created a medical assisted treatment program to help those with opioid addiction as they come in, getting them on the medical assisted treatment program. And then when they transition out, really connecting them with providers, whether that be housing, transitional housing, continued on the treatment program as they get out of jail. The hope is that all people who come here are better off when they leave. I'm also working on a substance use disorder program that's going to go out for an RFP to select a provider in the next couple of months. I really think that the sheriff's office needs to embrace transparency and oversight. The people of Sonoma County voted overwhelmingly for Measure P, and I think that that's something that really needs to be implemented. I think it's probably something that sort of based on our history is something that's long time in coming. So as sheriff, I would implement all of the items in Measure P that are deemed to be legal. As you may or may not know, there are some parts that are being held up in court, and when those are resolved and what is determined to be legal, I will implement those. I really want to support community-based policing and engagement throughout my career. What I didn't tell you is that I have spent a lot of time mentoring the youth of Sonoma County as a deputy sheriff, and all the way till I reached the rank of captain. I was really involved in our Explorer program. And for those of you who don't know, the Explorer program is essentially like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts with a law enforcement component to it. So I have mentored, there are people here who have gone through that program that I met when they were 15 years old, and now they're 31, 32 years old, and they are working for our agency. So that is also community-based policing, and it also really engages with our community to make sure that our community, make sure the sheriff's office looks more like our community, which is the last thing I want to talk about is diversity within the office. My entire time within this office, there have never been more than 5 African-American deputy sheriffs the entire time that I've been here. I have some plans to improve that, not only just for African-Americans, but for other members of our community. So we start to look more like the community that we serve. Granted, it will take a longer period of time than a year or so, the just process of changing the complexion, for lack of a better term, of an organization this large will take time. But I think that the plans that I have and the time that I plan on being here with the sheriff's office, that I can make substantive change in the way that our office looks.
Thank you. That was very good and comprehensive. So I know there's got a lot of questions. I've got a couple starting us out with Gregory and Gail. Let me just take a second to introduce us to you. This is a pretty typical meeting of a core group of people. We meet every Monday for an hour and a half to talk about things and make plans for the week. We're all over the county, but significantly part of Santa Rosa, done a lot of work in Santa Rosa. We tend to do a lot of lobbying of especially city and county organizations. And before COVID, we were pretty active in working at sweeps and helping people survive the sweeps in a slightly better condition. We have had a lot of things. We've been going for about, I think, 6 years now. So there's a lot more we've done, which I won't bother you with. Most of us are individual advocates, but we are, connected to churches and other organizations as well. And now I'm going to call on Gregory and then Gail.
Good morning, Eddie. I'm actually I was an employee of the Sheriff's Department in the 90s. Dick Michelson, who was a sheriff during the time, picked me. He was on my board at Community Support Network, and he picked me to run the Crime Analysis Crime Prevention Bureau. And I did that for a while. It sounds like you're much more in the light of working with other departments. You're not as much of a, outsider as most sheriffs are. One of the problems I've always perceived is directly elected sheriffs are often in opposition to boards of supervisors. We have that in our county. But it sounds like you're a little more amenable to working with other departments. I was going to ask you, and I'm glad you gave us some information about mental health, about transition out. All of those are possible if you work and play nicely with the rest of the county. If you don't, if you perceive yourself as invincible and untouchable by the community or the county, you end up like we have now. And so you have to excuse us for asking tough questions about how independent you think you are and how much you want to cooperate and collaborate with the community. If you want to say anything more about that, I'd appreciate it, because that's the judgment I'm going to make is, are you the, the typical sheriff who doesn't really care about the rest of the county because you're directly elected?
The answer to that is no. Though the sheriff is directly elected and the sheriff does have some latitude, the reality is that the sheriff is responsible to the entire community. And because of that, I think that there's a requirement that they collaborate and work with other members of the community. As I've gone around and I've talked to different people about running, one person asked me, if on day one I can make one change to the sheriff's office, what would that be? And my answer was to make all the relationships that we have be in a better place, because when we have good cooperation, we have good relationships, then we can really work on the problems that we are really facing, the real problems, and we can really get to work. So though the position of sheriff can have some independence, I don't think that a sheriff can be successful in providing the services that they are providing without having some collaboration. You have to collaborate with other police departments. You have to collaborate with public health, and all the other entities within the county, and even service providers, which we do here in a jail when we transition people out of jail. If we didn't have collaboration with housing advocates, then we couldn't get people housing. If we didn't have collaborations with people in Sonoma County Health, then we couldn't continue our medical assisted treatment program. So I am much more in the vein of collaborating with different entities and organizations throughout the county, because that's the only way that we're going to solve the issues that we have.
Thank you. Gail, and then Anita.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I have a very simple question and then a little more complex question. My first simple question is, are inmates offered vaccines for COVID when they enter? And I want to ask a more complex question. I think it's extremely unfortunate in our society the way it is right now that you are burdened with so much mental health and substance abuse issue. You're basically asked to be, mental health and substance abuse holding or group home or educational entity and so on. And that I know wasn't probably what you started out to do. But inside of that, I I have met police officers, not a sheriff particularly, but I know it exists in sheriffdom also, who seem really unempathetic to the homeless people that we are treating. The comment I'll never forget is looking down at a man who was sitting on the sidewalk next to his sleeping bag. The tall policeman said, well, he has had a choice, or he has a choice. And I realized that that young policeman didn't have much empathy, nor perhaps much understanding, maybe not much education as to what gets a person into a situation like that. So I really am happy to hear that you're working with youth in the community. I wonder if you have any plans for working with staff, and they'll be rather tricky because I know a lot of your staff is quite conservative. But is there ever any thought in your mind about how you might help your staff to be more empathetic with the people that they are sweeping off the sidewalk? So 2 questions: vaccine, and how can you help your staff have more empathy?
So with the vaccine question, yes, we do offer all inmates vaccines. We do a vaccine clinic twice a week, where even those who have refused a vaccine up to this point, who have been here for longer periods of time, have the ability to get a vaccine if they choose to. We've actually been vaccinating pretty early on because we were a congregate facility when, as the vaccines were being able to be rolled out, we were able to be, second or third in line in that initial rollout because we are a congregate facility, much like a nursing home. As far as dealing with staff and training them, I think that it really comes from the top of the organization. And when the leader of the organization is empathetic and sympathetic to the issues of not just our homeless population, but to our community in general, that filters down. There's also training involved in that. Training is also important to get people to understand really that homelessness is really a complicated issue. And it's not as simple as someone made a choice to be homeless or someone made a choice to be addicted to drugs. We go back to where really we have a real lack of mental health facilities and treatment, not only in our county, but I would probably argue nationwide. And homelessness is driven, in my opinion, by lack of mental health and lack of drug treatment. There are some other issues involved in there, but I think that those are the biggest two. And I see that every day in a jail. There is a lot of overlap between the individuals who are homeless, those who are suffering from mental health disorders, and those who are suffering from addiction. And often those suffering from addiction are the same that are suffering from mental health, the co-occurring disorders. So going back to your question is, how do you get the staff to see that? First, it comes from the leader, which is me. And then it filters down, and then there's also training so for people to really understand the issues that we're facing. And to be quite honest, you can't police yourself out of homelessness. You are not going to arrest people and solve the problem. It's just not going to happen. There needs to be a much more whole person, holistic, community-based
birds
involve it.
in French.
I'm sorry, would everyone please mute if you are not asking a question? I think that might be Bruce that, well, anyway, I shouldn't call him out.
OIFCAUX.
You may have to mute him.
I think we got it.
He's not listening.
All right, so we have Anita. Thank you for that, Eddie.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Anita, Kathleen, Victoria, and Suzanne. So Anita next.
I appreciate you stepping forward with our group of people. And my big contention is that when there's a 5150 and at the same time they find there's a warrant, they take the people to jail. And you and I both know that there are no mental health services in jail, but the arresting officer has supposed to use his judgment about whether or not the 5150 would be acknowledged. And so they put him in jail, but they say that, well, it's the judge's court order when there's a warrant outstanding, which is a lot of the reason why homeless people end up in jail. Okay, they have a warrant. Yeah, they were sleeping on the sidewalk or something. Okay, so my question is, I'm sorry, my computer needs electricity. Okay, my question to you about that is, would you encourage a police sheriff to use his best judgment, knowing that there are no mental health services at the jail, so that they could they take them to, you know, the mental health department where they screen people who have a 5150? Could they do that?
So,
Why don't they?
so I'm
Thank
going
you.
to correct you. I'm going to correct you a little bit. We actually
Okay.
do have mental health services in the jail. We have a behavioral health contract, and we have an on-staff psychiatrist, and we have several clinicians. We actually have a program called the jail-based competency programs, where when an individual is determined to be incompetent to stand trial, historically they would have to go out to the California Department of State Hospital, so Napa State, in order to receive treatment and restore their competency. We actually have 14 beds and specifically dedicated to that program, in addition to our behavioral health services within our facility. So we do have mental health facilities, and we're actually in process of building another addition to our jail with another 72 mental health specific beds in our jail, along with staffing and the treatment that goes along with that. So we do have services, and we do provide them separate and apart from our medical. To your question of arresting a 5150 versus having them seek treatment, that is always the preference, but the reality is that a lot of times CSU, they won't take them. They are either busy, or if it's a crime of violence, CSU, they won't take them. The psych emergency services, they won't take them. So then the only alternative for that officer or deputy is to either take them into custody or don't take them into custody, because CSU won't take them. And we have that issue here when we have some patients who are too acute for us to manage. We sometimes have to hold on to them for a longer period of time than we would like to, because CSU can't take them and provide them additional treatment.
And we have the Santa Rosa treatment program now over where Aurora was. Can't you use
Right.
that?
That's correct, but they're not psych emergency. So there's a 5150, meaning that's an emergency 72-hour hold, and those are either done by hospital or CSU. The one that is formerly Aurora, they only take them after a 5250 has been placed on them. That means that they've passed that 72-hour period, and then another doctor has said that they need to be given treatment for another 14 up to another 14 days. So Aurora is not a direct, or former Aurora is not a direct placement facility, meaning that they can come off of the street and be directly transferred there.
Thank you. This is a lot. This is a really complicated question and answer, which I think we should delve into, but we should let it go for the moment. But the lack of mental health treatment is obviously a problem. And as Anita says, people ending up in jail when they're in a mental health crisis is also a huge problem.
It is, and just to sort of answer the question, it would be my preference, and we actually do encourage, and it's in our current policy, that if it is mental health and a criminal issue, especially if it's a warrant, then mental health would be priority, and we try to place them in a mental health facility. It's just sometimes that's not an option.
Thank you. Kathleen, Victoria, Suzanne, Teddy, and Ludmilla.
Okay, well, Mr. Engram, thank you so very much for coming to speak with us today. Before I have a couple of questions, or I'll try to keep it down. I missed the number of mental health or behavioral health problems who are in jail at this time. You gave a percentage number. Could you repeat that for me, please?
It's about 50%. It fluctuates week to week, but it usually is between that 47 and 51%.
Okay. All right. So then, thank you very much. I've noted in the past, with all due respect, sir, I've noted in the past that you've said there were no systemic problems in the sheriff's office. And I think you've presented us with a more tempered view today, which I appreciate very much, because I think that the overwhelming passage of Measure P by nearly 66% of voters indicates that we do think there are systemic problems that need to be corrected. And it sounds to me as if you're addressing them, for which I am very grateful. I especially appreciate your emphasis on greater diversity in hiring. We need more women. We need more BIPOC individuals. And I want to ask you a question that I've asked of every sheriff, Rob Giordano and Mark Essick, since I got involved with this movement. And that is, I think that remains a huge rift between the sheriff's office and our Latino communities. I have asked the previous two sheriffs if they would please consider extending their condolences to Andy Lopez's parents, not to talk about liability, just to, as a person to person, go to speak with them and tell them how sorry you are that their son has lost his life. Are you willing to do that if you're elected?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I've said that before in different forms. And when I talk about community engagement, and I use that as an example, that I don't think that there is any problem with whether it be a chief of police or a sheriff expressing expressing sorrow for the loss of a life, any life. You don't have to take you don't have to take the liability on to say, I am sorry that this occurred, and I'm going to do whatever I can in the future to make sure that we can try and avoid. I don't think that in law enforcement, just the nature of the job, that you can ever 100% totally avoid a loss of life. I think what you can say is that you're sorry that a life has been lost, and work to do better, whatever you can. And sometimes you may not be able to do anything just because of the situation. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying or expressing sorrow that a life has been lost.
Okay, hold on just a second. We still have a lot of background noise, and I have no
Sorry.
idea where it's coming from, so people could be careful. Kathleen, did you finish?
Yeah. Yes, I more or less have finished. I just can't stress enough that I think this kind of a gesture will turn things around for the sheriff's department and our Latino brothers and sisters. So thank you.
Thank you. Victoria?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. And I'm very happy to see a Black candidate for this position. Very happy. And what I wanted to ask was I wanted to ask whether or not, because you stated that the duty of the sheriff office is for public safety. And, you know, I've worked closely with homeless action in monitoring the police misconduct involved with the homeless. And I've often fantasized what a police department that really cared about the safety of people would do in situations that we're in right now with the freezings. Now, like you said, there's many complicated reasons for people being on the street. And I was wondering if you could ever share my conception of sleeping bags and down jackets in the trunk of the police car for them to throw on people when they see them dying in the street. Thank you.
I
That's
think-
one question. I have another one.
Okay, so I think that would really come down to funding. If there was a group willing to partner with us and do that. For example, we do have groups that do that with teddy bears and things like that to provide to children, but it would have to be something that there would have to be some sort of funding source for that. The sheriff's office's funding is provided to it by the Board of Supervisors, and the sheriff's office uses that budget to provide their core services. So if there was a group that we could partner with, then I would not see an issue with that.
Yeah, it could go along with follow-up services by community organizations. And I would love to see that. Willingness is a big part. I'm so happy to see you're open to the concept. The other question I have is regarding discipline of officers. And I was wondering if you have had any citizen complaints registered in your file.
Against me, no, never.
Never a complaint.
Not a one.
Not a substantiated complaint.
No, not a complaint, period. I've never had a complaint.
Well, I'll be doggone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Victoria. Suzanne, then Teddy and Ludmilla.
Eddie, thank you very much for presenting to us. Mine is more of a statement of a wish for the future with the Sheriff's Department. What about getting Narcotics Anonymous there with, obviously an outside person with some years of being clean? What about having that in our Sheriff's Department?
So you mean in our jail? Because we do have Narcotics Anonymous.
I meant in the jail.
Yeah, we do have Narcotics Anonymous. We have a wide variety of services here in the jail, from high school and college education to substance use disorder programs, to medical assisted treatment, Narcotics Anonymous, religious groups, a whole host of programs here in the jail.
Thank you.
All right, Teddy. Thank you, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Mr. Engram. My name is Teddy Pierce. I have worked for the county. My husband was, when the department was labeled as mental health, he was the housing coordinator for 15 years up at mental health. We were both very concerted fans of Mike Kennedy and his programming that he brought into the jails. I'm wondering if you have any highlights of what Mike Kennedy had done and what you might try to reconsider doing, especially in partnerships with NAMI.
So Mike Kennedy was gone before I took over the jail.
Okay.
I've been here just shy of 2 years.
I got it.
And the programs that Mike instituted were actually cut in the budget years, the two budget years preceding this year. And that's why I'm bringing back this. That's why I have an RFP for a substance use disorder program, which was essentially Turning Point was the program that Mike Kennedy brought here. And that program was scaled back and then ultimately eliminated. So I am reinitiating that program, and I've secured funding from the Community Corrections Partnership to institute that program.
Okay. Thank you. And any partnerships with NAMI or any of the other mental health advocacy groups that you're considering?
We have a partnership with NAMI.
Wonderful.
I believe we have a partnership with NAMI, and I think when we do our RFP, then we'll see which other groups are out there to continue to partner with.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Teddy. Ludmilla.
So I've got like kind of two different questions, two sets of questions. One is what kind of nonviolent training, if any, do you currently have with people that you currently have control over, and what kind of training would you like to see in the Sheriff's Department? And paired with that is how do you feel about the CAHOOTS model teams?
So as far as nonviolence training, so quarterly we have our use of force training. And then during that quarterly use of force training, also incorporated in that is de-escalation. So that is something new within the last couple of years, where we have gone just we have gone from solely just use of force to that. I'm sorry, I have to turn my phone off. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Sorry about that. So, previously we would just have our use of force training and there would be no de-escalation component to that. Now our quarterly use of force training includes the de-escalation component of it. In addition to de-escalation, there is a mandatory duty to intercede, meaning if someone is violating our use of force policy, it is mandated that if there is another staff member, deputy sheriff, or correctional deputy on scene, they have a duty to intercede, and if they don't, they can be disciplined. In addition to that, we Post, which is the agency that regulates law enforcement in the state of California, has just introduced a new de-escalation program, and we have sent individuals to that training to train our deputies in de-escalation. So in addition to the things that we have done internally, we are bringing something in from the outside to further train our deputies on de-escalation.
Okay, and kind of, would you be looking for something similar for the sheriff's department as a whole if you were elected? Yes. Okay. Okay, and then the other kind of pair of questions I have is, if elected, what would you most like to change about the how the sheriff's department is running, or what their priorities are, or what do you feel they're most doing right currently that you would like to continue?
So I think there can be very little disagreement, and one of the things that we do right is emergency response. And I think that we've seen that over the past few years. And every emergency that we have, we are continually learning and getting better with that. What I would like to see change is, and I said this before, was our general relationship with the community as a whole, whether that be members of the board or different community groups or a BIPOC community, because once we see those things change and those relationships change, then we can really get to work on what the real issues. That's going to be some hard work. That's going to require me to engage. It's going to require decision makers within our office to engage. And part of that effort is, so historically, when there have been community groups or community meetings, whether it be one group or another, or neighborhood watch or something like that, we've sent a community services officer, or we sent the deputy sheriff, and we really haven't sent someone who has decision-making ability or the ability to talk to decision makers from our office. As sheriff, I would send someone from the management team, someone who either can make decisions directly to change the course of things that are occurring, or speak with someone within the office who can make those changes. So that's really going to help us in engaging with the community. And another part of what we really need to do to sort of bridge that gap is to be more transparent and let people know that we are holding people accountable when they violate our policies, and in some cases even the law. And I think with the new legislation that's been passed, because historically people haven't been able to see peace officer records, and now with the law that was passed, SB 1421 a couple of years ago, and there was an amendment to it last year. Now, in some cases, and I think it's the cases that people want to see, dishonesty, use of force, those sorts of cases, those investigations in those cases will become a public record. And what people will see based on that is that when we have had people who have violated our policy, they have been held accountable. Sometimes, in some cases, the decision was made to terminate them. And I think when people see that we have been and we continue to hold people accountable, that will go a long way within our community as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
So I see hands up, Suzanne, Gregory, and Gail, who have already spoken and asked a question. Is there someone who hasn't asked a question who would like to do that? Now is a good time. We have about 20 minutes left here. So my main question, I think, well, I have a bunch of them, mostly around the jail. And you said in your opening remarks that you wanted to connect people once they get out of jail, so they don't just go back to the same thing, especially the streets. And one of the things you were suggesting was connecting them with housing, which we know is like really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you have a particular plan for doing that, or a particular group you work with to try to do that. How do you see that being improved?
So when I took over the jail, I added 2 positions called discharge planners. And so the discharge planners, they what they do is they reach out into the community and try to secure those types of things, such as housing. Sometimes they are more successful than others. You know, I think that when you talk about housing, when I talk about housing when leaving the jail, I'm really talking about, are they going to have a place to stay, which more times than not means a shelter if they are open to it. I don't think that you can really move one person from the jail into, you know, one of the few hotels that the county owns. I think those are pretty well taken, but some sort of hopefully supportive environment. And so the discharge planners really do those 2 discharge planners really do that transition from in custody to out of custody, whether it be with maybe trying to find a shelter bed, maybe making sure that there is a prescription waiting for someone when they get out of custody, if there's a doctor's appointment that they needed or a psychiatrist appointment, if they are able to do that. So that's really what I'm talking about when people are transitioning from custody to out of custody.
Thank you. Bruce, you haven't asked yet. Would you unmute yourself? And oh, looks like Bruce is on the phone. Yeah, okay. Gregory, do you have another question? I see Gregory maybe has stepped out as well. Suzanne, no, Suzanne put her hand down. So Gail. Got you, Victoria.
There we go. A couple of quick questions. I remember quite some time ago watching people that were released from jail in the morning walking away without any shoes. And I wondered how shoes are handled when people are admitted. Are they thrown into a pile, or are they denied people when they leave the jail? And secondly, what is the thing about chasing people in cars? Nothing to do with most homeless people, but I'm always just really hurt when I read a newspaper article that there was a high-speed chase by a law enforcement person and someone had a crash and someone was killed. That's it.
So with shoes, they're not, an individual's property is placed in separate storage. So if a person comes in and they have shoes, shirts, jackets, whatever, they go into a bag, a clothing bag, essentially. It's a heavy duty clothing bag, and their clothes are put into that bag. And then when they are released with their own clothes. If a person comes in without shoes, then we actually give them shoes, the jail shoes that we have, orange shoes. So if you saw someone leaving jail and not wearing shoes, it was most likely by choice, as opposed to them not being given any shoes. So we have like, if you're familiar with Crocs, those are the shoes that we use, Croc type shoes, but they're orange. And as far as law enforcement car chases, every department has their own policy on chases. Some have a no chase policy, some have chase in certain circumstances policy. But if you have a vehicle pursuit policy, one of the primary concerns in the vehicle pursuit policy is weighing the danger of not apprehending the suspect with the danger of continuing in the pursuit. And that's something that has to be weighed throughout the pursuit. And the balance is more towards the danger to the public, then the pursuit should be terminated. And if the pursuit is not terminated based on those weighing factors, then not only the officer, but the supervisor supervising that officer is subject to discipline.
Thank you.
Go.
Bruce,
They called on me.
Bruce?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hear you just
Yeah,
fine.
we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for Eddie, I would like to know what groups are particularly supporting you. Where are you finding your greatest strength of support?
So my support is sort of all over the board. I have individual community members, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, other law enforcement groups, firefighter groups, business groups. I've been endorsed by Congressman Mike Thompson, Senator Bill Dodd, Supervisor David Rabbit, Supervisor Gore, 3 of the 5 city council members in Sonoma, 2 city council members in Healdsburg, city council member in Cloverdale, 3 of the 5 city council members in Runner Park. So it's all over.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Gregory?
Yeah, I'm really glad you're going after mental health funds for the jail. I too remember Mike Kennedy and I remember the programs they had there. I want to let you know, I'm serving on the board appointed review committee, oversight committee for mental health programs for, the 250 million that we're going to be spending in the next 10 years. And I want to illustrate the isolation of the sheriff's department. As I remember that process and I see what's going to be funded, you weren't at the table. There wasn't a whole lot of sheriffs, what are the needs in the sheriff's department when either the tax measure was put together or what looks like the implementation. So I want to tell you that there are repercussions of being isolated and having a battle with the Board of Supervisors. Now, I hope we can overcome that. I hope we can figure out a way of having some of the new mental health monies end up serving those in your jail because, like you said, you are the home of a whole lot of need. And I just want to pledge to you that, you're not going to be isolated if you get elected and really, really work with other people because the programs that are there are as vital as those that the mental health department funds in other areas.
Yeah, and kind of going through this budget cycle for fiscal year 22-23, the lack of Measure O funds for what we could do became really apparent to me. So hopefully that's something that we can rectify in the next budget year 23-24 going forward to provide those services here within the jail. Luckily, the Community Corrections Partnership were able to help a little bit and fund those things. But I really think that, as I said, throughout the county, not just in the jail, there's really a lack of mental health. I'm really glad Measure O was passed. It's something that is severely needed in this county.
Thank you. So we have Teddy and Victoria, and we have about 5 minutes left. I want to leave a little time for us to wrap up the meeting, and I have another question for Eddie. So be concise, Teddy.
Thanks. Thank you again, Mr. Engram. The governor had a big announcement last week about a new programming called Care Court. It's generated a lot of feelings. I wonder if you had been able to follow that press release announcement and if you have any early impressions.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't see the press
Okay.
release, so I wouldn't be able to speak on it.
Yeah, I would suggest you look at it. It would affect the jail amazingly if it was passed. Victoria.
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Engram, since he has a vision of expanding representation of the community within the sheriff's department staff. In other words, more minorities being hired, more Black and brown people.
Yeah, I actually do.
I was wondering How were you planning to implement that? Thank you.
Okay, so I actually do have a plan, and I don't know if, and I think when people talk about the representation of the sheriff's office and, women and members of the BIPOC community, they're really speaking about our law enforcement arm of the sheriff's office. The detention division is infinitely way more diverse than our law enforcement division. And that's a factor of a couple of things. Number one, and primarily, is that we hire transfer officers primarily on the law enforcement side, meaning people who are police officers or deputy sheriffs somewhere else, and then they come to work for us. And the vast majority of those individuals are people who are born and raised in Sonoma County, and then they took a job somewhere else and now they're coming back home, or they have a spouse, or there's some other reason that they're coming back to Sonoma County. And because Sonoma County in general is not as diverse as other areas, that's what our law enforcement side ends up looking like. Conversely, our detention division, the rank of correctional deputy is an entry-level position, and we are always hiring for entry level. And because of that, we have a lot more women. We have a lot more members of the BIPOC community here in our jail. So part of my vision for increasing diversity on the law enforcement side is increasing the pipeline, meaning promotional opportunities for individuals who are working in our jail to work on our law enforcement side. We haven't historically had that. I've advocated that here in my position as assistant sheriff, and the tide is slowly turning, so we are seeing more of that. But what typically ends up happening is that those qualified, diverse individuals go work for other agencies, because there are some people who just don't want to work detention for the entirety of their career. They want to be on law enforcement on the patrol side. So we lose a lot of diversity of people going to work for Santa Rosa or Petaluma or Roanoke Park or any other agency. And I would like to stop that and have those quality individuals who already work for us transition and help make us a more diverse office, and also create opportunities for those individuals. Also, I would like to cease or limit the reliability, what we've had for relying on hiring on transfers as opposed to hiring new hires, entry level. And though that is more expensive, that really, I think, is the only way that we are going to change the complexion of our office. And also recruiting from outside of the area. I think that that's important too, and engagement within members of our community, so those young people in the BIPOC community know that the sheriff's office is a good place to work, and that they want to come and serve their community as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to echo what everyone has said, or what many people have said, in thanking you for coming and answering these questions. And maybe this is an easy thing for you. I know it's not an easy thing for me to do, so I appreciate it. And my final request from you is, to me, it seems pretty clear that we do not know enough about what's going on in the jail for homeless people and mentally ill people, which I'm sure there's a big overlap, drug addiction. So we need to get more up to speed, but I think we also could play a role in improving those services and helping those individuals. I wonder if you were elected, if you would appoint or participate in a committee with us to do some work in the jail, specifically around homelessness.
I could support doing work around homelessness. As I said, it's more complex than people think it is, and it does affect everything that happens here. A lot of what happens here in the jail. So as I said before, partnerships within the community are things that need to occur. And unless you have those partnerships and those relationships, then nothing's going to be solved.
Yeah, and I do think we need to understand more what you're already doing, but I also think we bring a lot of experience with the complexity, and might have some solutions and some ideas that you haven't considered. So I do hope we could do some ongoing work if you're elected.
Thank you. Yeah, I could certainly consider that.
Great.
More
Thank
on
you.
that.
All right. Shall we have a round of jazz hands and applause for Mr. Engram? Thank you again for coming and
Yeah.
you know, we
Well,
hope you come back. This is an open meeting. You're always welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great.
Have a good day.
You too. All right, we have 3 minutes left just to kind of wrap us up. I wanted to remind you what I said in the beginning of the meeting, that Rhiannon has made an arrangement with Janelle from Unsheltered Friends Outside in Roanoke Park to come next week. We also have a Know Your Rights training that's been rescheduled, and it's going to happen on the 28th. So that's coming up for future meetings. I think that's about what we have time to talk about today.
Is the Unsheltered Friends Outside coming next week?
Yes, next week.
Okay, on the 14th.
That's right. Any other last words?
I just want to thank everybody who got the Unsheltered Friends Outside to come. And I think we should continue this series right away of maybe even having more than one at one time. We need to have the other organizations that work on the same issues we do to come and present so we can think about collaborating for, it's kind of late, but we need to do it.
If we could do it. Yeah, thank you, Rhiannon. Let's do a little applause here. This is one of our priorities. She made a good step forward for us. And it's awesome. I saw another hand, I think maybe Gregory.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that we got a month before the deadline for applying for ARPA funds. And it's my perception that the homeless community hasn't really come up with solid recommendations for what ought to be spent, and coalitions that I thought would be built and applied together aren't happening at the pace at which I wanted it. So
Yeah.
I hope we get some money out of ARPA, and I hope that agencies build that kind of collaboration.
Yeah. I would really love to see other groups of people other than the Saves leadership or the Homeless Action leadership take some leadership in making collaborations and coming up with new ideas. Yeah, Kathleen, did you want to say something? You
You're
can't hear
muted.
you, Kathleen.
I think Gregory is spot on with that observation. But I think the only thing that's going to spur it is if someone knowledgeable, such as you, sir, write out a couple of suggestions for possibilities that'll make it easier for people to latch on to something.
Yeah, I did that. I sent it out to the Google.
Ready?
Yeah, already.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. There's too much going on.
I told everybody how I'd spend the 34 million, and nobody's taken me up on it, so it's all right.
Linda and Gail.
I don't know if you know, is Unsheltered Friends in the HA website? I kind of did a search and I'm not seeing them come up.
I think they are. Look under, I think they were moved to nonprofits. So look under that as well as grassroots. Gail?
Yes, I'm going to cheat because I haven't read what Greg put out, and I'm just puzzled. The request for people to think about how they'd like to partner with ARPA funds, that needs to go to organizations, right? Like
I sent it to everybody.
AOK and that sort of thing. That's who you're talking to when you're
Well,
okay. Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Ludmilla and Jerry.
No, I'm
Okay,
I'm done.
no problem. Jerry?
Yeah, just very quickly, in support of what Gregory already wrote, there's a lot of dialogue, but no specifics. The ARPA process encouraged collaboration, but despite 3 collaborative meetings, the big organizations sort of morphed off into their own projects. It's best I can understand. So Share has a thing with community houses that is going to try to do some very specific collaboration to get people from out of transitional housing into more permanent share type housing. But other than that, the big players who are going to be able to ask for millions of dollars are preparing their own proposals without input, which is why I asked for it to be on the agenda today. Sorry, I had to miss most of the meeting.
The other thing is there's a heck of a lot of the ARPA money sitting over at the COC.
Yeah.
$4 million was given directly to them to spend, which they're going to have to figure out what to do with in the next few months. So it's not just the county ARPA process that people can go ask for new program ideas. There's at least 8 million, 4 from ARPA and 4 more from HAP, which this new COC board is going to have to decide what to do with. And so I encourage people, as Jerry has done, to show up at those meetings and watch what they're doing and put pressure on them too.
Yeah.
Well, they'll RFP that. Does anyone know?
I don't know what they're doing. They have a strategic planning committee trying to figure out how to get a strategic plan before they have to decide. But they're going to decide real quick because they're not going to wait.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't wait. You should be asking for the money now.
Yeah. It's discouraging, and yet the encouragement is that there is some money out there, lots of money, and let's try to get some for homeless people. That's all I'm going to say, and we'll meet again next week and talk about it some more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye.
please send me your thoughts about Eddie today, if you have a minute, or send them to the whole group. We didn't really have time to talk about it, but there was a lot of information, and I thought pretty impressive guy.
Yep, I think it went well. So thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
I
Bye.
have a question for you,
Bye.
Gregory, if you have a minute.